BMW sedans with an M badge on them are designed to be lightning quick in a straight line because they need to be able to keep up with Autobahn speeds. Now, we don't have those types of speed limits here in North America, but that doesn't mean that the BMW M badged cars, like this one here, are incapable of going quickly. But despite where you are, they're not necessarily the most efficient. This 2024 BMW i5 M60 sits on 21-inch tires, which means the EPA claims that we should have a maximum range of 240 miles. Now, can we actually get that? Let's go find out in another one of our 70 miles an hour real-world, real-time range tests, and also check out other great features that this car has. We're topping off right now, so let's get going. All right, we are on our way again, this time in the 2024 BMW i5 M60. We have a stated range of a little over 229 miles, 230. I've set a destination that is approximately half that distance away, and we're gonna go there and come back and see how efficient the car is. We're not starting this test exactly on the turnpike because we've had some Electrify America issues recently, so I'd much rather go to a station that I'm more comfortable with. So that's what I did, which was the Flying J off of I-280 and Interstate 8090. And yeah, we just did an EV Pulse charging challenge. Took under an hour to go from like 2% to 100, with something like only like 4 miles of range left on the battery. It did exceed its peak charge rate of 205 kilowatts for a bit, which was great. And, you know, not a bad charging experience. Some things I'm excited to go over with you on this drive. The Level 2 ADAS works much similar to that in the EQE video that we just did, which is nice. We do have adaptive cruise control, which is nice. And I have a lot of good creature comforts. The only thing you're really going to hear me complain about, and I'll get it out of the way right now, is there's no ventilated seats for the price of this car. It's a little pricey to not have that. But after we get through this plaza here, I will switch over to efficient mode, which is how you would drive the car if you were trying to maximize your range. Like other versions of this test, however, I am not turning the air conditioning off or doing anything like that. Because one, it's 94 degrees outside, and that's hot. And two, you shouldn't have to, efficient modes should be a little bit better. Maybe it churns down the air conditioning a little bit, or doesn't give you as much throttle input, or gives you a little bit more guidance on how to drive efficiently, but it should never make you suffer. Now, it's okay to have a suffer mode, probably, and it weighs lighter. That's more comfortable. I would argue, and I will argue, a friend of mine on the internet had said that this car negates the purpose of the M5. I agree. Agreed. So check out my Blue Sky to see where I agree on that. Just find my name on the Blue Sky. I'm not on Twitter anymore. Reasons. In the main driving display, I have the augmented reality view up, which shows a live camera projection forward, and then plants like the lane tracking stuff and everything on there. It actually kind of looks like you're in a fighter jet, because when it locks onto the car in front of you, it'll put a little green dot on it, like a Maverick waiting for Tone to fire some rockets. It's cool. It's clever. There's a massive heads-up display, which I can't really see right now because I'm wearing polarized sunglasses and we're driving into the sun. But some clever interior ambient lighting, which you'll probably see before this drive is over, because as you can see, the sun is setting. And it also kind of changes based on drive mode. So in normal, I set up a color, but in like the sport mode, it'll do kind of an M motif. So part of it will be red, part of it will be blue. It's really pretty clever. The infotainment's the modern BMW system. It's super responsive, super quick, supports wireless Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, gesture control, voice control. It's all there. A lot of the climate functions and everything have now moved to permanently to the bottom of the touchscreen. I'd still prefer real buttons, but at least they're always up. Additionally, the air vents, there's little actual physical manual adjustments for them, but if you want to close them off all the way, it's a touch-sensitive button to that. So, little mix of both. Overall, the climate's relatively easy to use, but I always like buttons. Real buttons are always kind of nice. Down sort of on the center stack, this car has the glass controls option. So there is a glass shifter, a glass iDrive controller, and a glass start button. It gets really hot in the sun, let me tell you. But it's all surrounded by gloss black, and this car doesn't even have 2,500 miles on it, and the gloss black is already showing some signs of wear, because of course it is, because gloss black is terrible. You should, if you buy a car with a gloss black interior trim pieces, you should immediately do not pass go, do not collect $200, get it PPF'd. Do it. I don't care what anybody on the internet will tell you, it's nearly impossible to keep clean unless you have like a professional detailer constantly cleaning it, and you probably don't. It looks good in press photos, it looks good when it's super clean, it's nearly impossible to keep clean. So PPF is your friend. Have a shop do it before you even take delivery. You'll occasionally hear that beep that's telling me that I am not paying attention. It's even though I'm just glancing over at the infotainment screen or trying to use some of the car's controls. I think it's kind of funny that he yells at me for trying to use the car's controls, because if they were, that's kind of a judge of how easy they are to use. If the car thinks I'm distracted, then maybe the controls are a bit too distracting. The level 2 ADAS on this car is hands-on, but it will do automatic lane changing, and it'll do it quite quickly. Like, you tap the button, it'll immediately kind of really quickly move you over there. Except here, with the sunlight, it thought something was in that lane and then aborted, but there is nothing there. So there's sensors, there's radars, as well as cameras. Cameras don't like this particular amount of glare that we have right now, which is why camera-only systems are not super reliable. You need to have a backup source of radar, things like that. Because, again, if we had a fully camera-only based autonomous emergency braking system right now, for example, odds are it wouldn't be able to stop with the car in front of it. That's not a statement of BMW, it's just a statement of fact. Getting back to our destination, it's 206 miles away. We have 210 miles of stated range. So we should be able to make that no problemo. And not end up alongside the road like we did with the Fiat 500e. Not that it was the Fiat's fault. Reminder, that's not the Fiat's fault that I ran out. I just thought that I had more range than I did. And the thing is per Fiat, it should have a 42 kilowatt hour battery pack, and I didn't even use barely 40 kilowatt hours. So the nominal amount of juice in the pack must be lower. And had I known that, I probably would have been able to better predict the thing, but I didn't know if it was optimal or if it was, nominal, or if it was gross. So now I know it's gross. BMW in this car quote nominal. They quote the usable pack size, and I think that's important. You need to know how much electricity you're going to be able to use, because gross pack size really doesn't matter. Now, gross pack size will always be bigger than usable, because the car needs to have a little bit of extra for making sure systems don't fail, and to account for decreased cell performance, things like that. So you'll hardly ever shouldn't see a battery that'll let you use the entirety of the pack while driving. It is now 85 degrees now. Woo! It's cooled off. Now we're attempting to hit a target average speed of 70 miles per hour, which is the speed limit. This car will not give us our average speed, so when we're done, we're going to have to do some math. The plus side to that is maybe my math will be more accurate. The downside is I won't know sort of when I'm driving how much over or under I am of that average, so I can't necessarily correct as we go to try to make up for it. So I have a good idea, just based on traffic and stuff, that we should be pretty close to that 70 number, unless we run into something that really slows us down. I didn't tell you that this car priced as tested is $93,895. It has the updated level 2 ADAS stuff, which I think you want, the glass stuff, which you don't need, but the glass controls come as part of a premium package with an executive package with a heated steering wheel. And I think you want the heated steering wheel. I think you should always want the heated steering wheel. Why isn't that standard? And also, where are my ventilated seats? This is a $93,000 car. Since our reset, we're averaging 2.4 miles per kilowatt hour. Not bad. Not great either. We were getting 2.9 out of that EQE, which was an SUV. Granted, it didn't make nearly as much horsepower. It was under 300. This is close to 600. But that's also an SUV, and this is a sedan. Now, I didn't hit the indicator here to make that lane change because this level 2 ADAS supports eye following. So if it pops up suggesting that you should do a lane change, if you just look into the mirror, it will do the lane change. Hands have to stay on the wheel. So you're probably like, well, why not just do the lane change myself? If your hands are on the wheel, fair point. Well made. Don't know. Don't have a good answer for you there. It is a little bit nicer, though. You start to get used to just kind of holding your hand on the wheel and then kind of letting it do the lane change. And yeah, it's not the same as your hands in your lap, but you do get used to it doing it. And it is kind of... I'm sure there's a bunch of other clever things this car does, but I think the augmented reality heads-up display or the instrument cluster view is pretty clever. And I haven't really dug to find other things. So, there. I believe it about 11 kilowatt charge at home, 250 kilowatt DC fast charge. So 48 amp charge at home and you're all set. You know, you're gonna get that 80 some kilowatts overnight, no problem. 6 hours, probably 6 to 7 hours from fully dead to fully charged. And 240 miles is more than enough range for you to go back and forth to work. Most people. I mean, that's even enough to get me back and forth to the airport without having to charge, which is nice. Getting overtaken by a Volvo XC90. Just drove the Volvo EX90 last week, and I can't tell you what it's like to drive because I'm probably going to post this video before the embargo lift. But you should come back and check it out because you might find it interesting, or you might not. Are we there yet? No. So why do this kind of testing? Well, because others do it and the content does well. It's stuff that you guys want to see. And until EVs become, really ubiquitous, it's one of those things that the more information you have as a potential buyer or as a potential owner, I think the better off that you will be. And there's just so much misinformation out there regarding EVs, and so much just people manipulating the data, taking experiences and then manipulating it in such a way to make it look horrible. And then sometimes there's problems with the experience, for sure. But there's coming and addressing this type of vehicle and this type of vehicle type and this type of propulsion. There's the journalistic approach where you come into it looking at it in good faith. You try to do a good faith evaluation, and there's just folks who don't do that. They'll plug the car in at 70% and wonder why they can't get the peak charge rate. Well, that's just not how batteries work. Of course, they're smart enough to know this because, they claim that they're EV experts and have engineering degrees and all of this stuff. So if you take them at their word that they are an expert, then why lie? Why manipulate, I should say? Because it generates clicks. And the thing is, yes, the internet is very much a click-driven thing. If you watch this video, the more you watch this video, conceivably, the more money we make through ad revenue. But, my staff is paid a salary. So if a video does particularly well, they're not necessarily making more because of that. They're encouraged to continue to make videos, but if one flops, they're also not punished for that either. And if you are a contributor to a website that maybe only pays based on views, then you have all of the motivation in the world to get people to click. So then you write clickbait. Also, who puts, talking of charging from 70% above, nobody goes with 3/4 of a tank of gas and tops their car off regularly. They don't do that. So drive the car how you would drive a gas car and put electricity in it when you would put gas in a gas car. And your experience will actually be a little bit better. No, DC fast chargers are not gas station. And really, if you want to have the best EV ownership experience, understanding the differences between a gas and an EV make a lot of sense. Because then you can game the system to your advantage. You can have home charging, so you always start with a full tank, or not necessarily a full battery, but 90%, 80%, whatever you set it at, right? You start the day with your range, so you never have to go to the gas station. You never have to stop. You never have to forget. Oh, darn. I didn't put gas in, so now I gotta wake up extra early the next morning to stop. or leave early for work or whatever. No, you don't have to do that. You know, this car went from 10 to 80% in less than 30 minutes. I have to check the footage to tell you the exact number, but that's a solid 200 miles of range. Like, that's plenty for that time frame. You know? The GMP cars will do it even quicker. So there's just, yes, finding a good charger can sometimes be a challenge, and those chargers do need to be better. But if you're going to consistently test vehicle performance, then you need to find a good charger, and you need to use those chargers as your benchmark. You have to try to employ as much of the scientific method as you can, in as much as you can control. And again, if you have an engineering degree, you should know that. While we're still doing okay on range, we have 183 miles to go, 192 left in the battery, so hopefully, fingers crossed, we don't end up stranded. 40 miles into it, and we're now up to 2.6 miles per kilowatt hour. So the efficiency is getting better, hopefully. Of course, this time of night is full of bugs. I am looking forward. Car doesn't think that I am, though. I'm looking right ahead, car. I'm looking right ahead. And I just took my sunglasses off, so you should be able to see my eyes even better. I digress. The head-up display in this car is massive. Like, it seems like it takes up the whole windshield. But it won't do the augmented reality stuff. It'll give you directions, it'll show you a map on the heads-up display. But it won't do... And it'll show you some of the driver assist stuff, but it won't combine, like, the arrows that show you which, specifically what road it's showing. Not a lot of cars will project that up onto the heads-up display, but I think, like, the new S-Class, for example, will. So this car just had me pass a non-existent car. The Mercedes did that, too. It was like, hey, you should get in the left lane. Oh, hey, you should get back in the right lane. I do love some fresh tarmac, though. So nice. You know, there's no motor running, so it's just quiet, serene, highway driving. Occasionally I'll hear the passenger seat kind of vibrate a little bit, the seat back. It's kind of annoying, I guess. You probably wouldn't hear it in a normal gas-powered car, but since you hear everything in this. And right now on this fresh tarmac, I'm hearing wind noise more than I'm hearing tire noise. Which is also, it's pretty quiet in here. Let's see if we can ask the Apple Watch. 58 decibels. That's pretty quiet. For a cruise missile. I am paying attention, car. I'm staring right ahead in this car. It's like, no, you're not. Yes, I am. I was looking at gas was $3.33 a gallon, which on the turnpike is expensive. Not expensive for right now, but it's like $3.15 at home. Now we're no longer on the silkiest smooth tarmac, so I hear a little bit more road noise. Lame. It's now 60 decibels instead of 58. 60 miles in, we're up to 2.7 miles per kilowatt hour. We have 172 miles of range left in the battery, 161 to go. So everything's looking like we're not going to have to call a tow truck. Yay! So I don't know if it's like this on all versions of the i5, but where it shows the car, it displays where it would show the car. It shows it in this car's color with the optional wheels, like the 360-degree display and stuff like that. I'm assuming it's per car. But it's pretty cool, and I like it. I like it a lot. Now, unfortunately, I don't intend on running this car completely dead. Typically on these tests, I don't want to run the car completely dead, because coming stranded alongside the road can be dangerous. I don't want to have to pay for a tow truck. The state police will get mad. Like, that's a thing. Now, with the Fiat 500, yes, we happen to do that. And I know there's some commenters out there that think that if we don't run it dead, it's not worth doing the test. Disagree, but, you know, for all of those reasons there. But we are going to go through longer than maybe 20 or 40 miles worth of driving, even though I do actually believe that's probably enough to extrapolate the overall range. We do this extra testing for you right there. Other than the occasional pocket of traffic, it hasn't been too bad. Overall, we're definitely going a little bit slower than the average speed of everybody on this road right now, because we do keep getting overtaken, but so far we're about on track with our target speed. This trip computer is interesting because it'll show you how much you've regened. we've generated regen to 0.5 kilowatt hours of electricity, which not really sure where. Probably as we're slowing down to get onto the turnpike, the occasional slowing down when we catch up with traffic, maybe. But so the display that's up currently shows the car, and it shows the car in sort of a real-time position. Wheels are spinning, headlights are on. If I flash my high beams, it'll actually flash the headlights. The turn signals, as you can see, just popped up, work, which is really kind of clever. I think it's clever. It's those little touches I like. Lots of car makers do it, little different ways of doing it. I like how this is done in here. 70 miles in 59 minutes and 30 seconds. So our average speed is just a little over 70. 2.7 miles per kilowatt hour. 'Tis all good. So we approach the state line. So lately I've been using the smart regen function in these cars. So instead of setting a single level of regen, I'm kind of letting the computer sort things out. And it does that a variety of different ways in this car, I can tell, based on what's in front of you, how quickly you're approaching something in front of you. Is your indicator on? Like, are you about to make a turn? How fast is the road around you? All sorts of different things to kind of calculate the amount of regen you can get. And it's, at first you think, oh, well, it's not predictable. Like when it's one default setting, it's predictable. And if you're constantly kind of arguing or fighting with the computer, it'll never be quite the same. And in some ways, yes. But when you kind of get used to it, it's kind of almost, it is a nicer experience. I don't know if it's being any more efficient, but the Germans will say coasting is better than regenning in a lot of situations. So this kind of does both. Indiana, more to discover. Usually at this point of the drive, I'll crack wise about Indiana, but I'm not going to. So one thing I haven't found annoying, and I kind of thought that I would, is in this car, you cannot set the distance, your following distance in the adaptive cruise control with any button on the steering wheel. You actually have to go into a menu. Now, when you go into that menu, you can set the distance, but then there's an option to also set the distance plus adaptive. And when you have it adaptive, it kind of looks at everything going on to try to set a good distance. And so far, it's been pretty good at it. It doesn't seem to want to leave too much of a gap, at least a gap that I would really notice. I do have it set on its closest setting, and so it is following maybe a little bit closer than some other people would, but I don't find it too frustrating. That Volvo EX30 doesn't have the ability to change it at all, and it's supposedly just smart the whole way. Now, you'll have to watch that video to see how it works in there, but let's just say it might need a little tweaking, maybe? In efficient mode, it does also show you on the display how much range you've reached. Not just kilowatt hours, but actual, like, hey, here's the... It's interesting data. Not sure how useful it is, but it is interesting. The California-Michigan Cannabis Company. 1 mile from the state line. Because it's illegal in Indiana. But it's not illegal to advertise it. This Forerunner keeps sitting in my banana spot. Alright, sit rep. 2.8 miles per kilowatt at 84.7 miles in. It's 79 degrees outside, so it is getting cooler, thank goodness. We have 137 miles to get back to our starting point, and an indicated 154 miles. So, woo, no tow truck. 2.8 miles per kilowatt is not amazing. It's not bad. It's not great. But considering the performance sort of trade-off, it's probably right where it needs to be. Now, I was originally supposed to get like the E40 version of this, which would be like the entry-level i5 of electric, but there was a scheduling issue and they had to swap last minute. That would be the more efficient version of the car, obviously, not as much power, stuff like that, but probably a more realistic representation of the average 5 Series electric buyer. Now, this is Model S Plaid money, and this is not as quick as the Model S Plaid by any stretch, but it's pretty nice inside. Tech works pretty well, charges pretty quick, and it's a BMW. So take that for what it is. I know I'll just be excited to head the other way back towards home. Because I'm bored. Our exit to turn around at is at LaGrange, and I keep thinking of the Skynyrd song. Doop 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 doop. That song was also in the movie Armageddon, which for disaster movies, pretty good. Definitely anti-Russian propaganda. But hey, the Russians are kind of jerks right now, so there you go. And not to talk too much about that conflict, but you probably all saw on the news that Ukrainians were able to take a hydrogen fuel tank from a Toyota Mirai and make an improvised explosive device out of it. Now, some people are like, oh, it's a hydrogen bomb. No, it's not a hydrogen bomb, at least within the context of what we understand a hydrogen bomb. But they did detonate some hydrogen inside a container, and it went boom. But really, the funny part of the story, I mean, the absolutely, like, just chef's kiss of the whole thing is that they used a pizza delivery drone to deliver the explosive. So you know those little drones that kind of like go around like Ann Arbor and stuff and deliver pizza and DoorDash and Uber Eats and all of that stuff, those autonomous things? Yeah, that. They used that to carry a bomb. That's funny. Well, is it a real story? I hear you ask. Yes, because they filmed it. You gotta do it for the gram. So there are video of it happening on the internet. Turns out. I do like this sort of interior ambient crystal jaggedy edgy sort of thing going on because it's lit by the ambient lights. So right now in the efficient mode it's gone to this like light teal ambiance, and then like I said in M mode or in the sport mode it turns to kind of a blue and a red, which I'll show you a little bit once it actually gets dark. And then you can customize in your own mode and stuff like that. There's also other modes like relax and stuff that'll like open the sunroof or turn the heat up or adjust whatever. Some of the stuff is very weird. I wish this car had heated and cooled cup holders. Some BMWs do, and those are nice. Properly nice. I mean, I was complaining about a ventilated seat. Now I want a cooled cup holder, but you know, I want it all, everybody. I want it all. I am paying attention, car. Stop beeping at me. There's the state police. The 5-0. Well, the next exit, we can finally turn around. Woo! After we pass the Gomer Pyle Service Plaza. Kind of surprised there isn't some kind of a dark mode for the navigation maps, considering it's pretty dark now. Let's pull up the navigation. Settings. Auto zoom. And this trucks came over. Is there somebody here? Yeah, okay. So now this Touareg that I had no choice but to slow down for is on my bumper because the semi came over in front of me and I did. So then he's going to cut me off. Good job. Gold star. Oh, hey, it went to dark mode by itself. There we go. It's too bad I won't be able to see that Touareg get pulled over up in the road. The Atlas, I'm sorry, not a Touareg, an Atlas. It's too bad. So I'm sure they will if they keep driving 100 miles an hour. Well, we're about to get off the highway to turn around. It says we'll arrive at the halfway point at 51% state of charge, which originally it said it was only going to be at 36% state of charge. So the gasometer obviously bases a lot of previous driving and don't necessarily you can kind of maybe trust a little bit of it, but until you've been driving consistently on whatever driving style you're driving, it takes a bit for it to adapt. That doesn't make any sense, does it? What I mean to say is the estimate on percentage battery and stuff like that will get better the more you drive the way you're going to drive. So if you're driving quickly and kind of crazily, then you are going to show less range. But as it adapts to the driving style that you're doing, then it'll become more accurate. So there, that's borderline English. Oh, it's that Volkswagen Atlas that cut me off. Huh. Look at that. How the turns tabled. How the turns have tabled. All right. 111 miles left to go. Now, it does say it's 111 miles, and now the car says I only have 110 miles left of range. So that's interesting. But it shows a little arrow thing next to it. So, I think it's showing me here that it's 110 miles to the destination. But that can't be right because there's 111 indicated. So I'm not entirely sure what happened. But I don't like it. Good old Howe, Indiana. What is here? I have no idea. But it is my turnaround spot. Let's start the process home. It's sprinkling. Let's see if I can show you the color change now. So if I go into my modes and choose sport, you'll see that it kind of goes red, but then part of it went blue over here, sort of as it processed, which was kind of cool. And then back to efficient, does this blue with a mixed color. Sport. It's clever. I like it. You know what? I like BMWs, and I like this BMW. Just do. Always have. Remember the first time I drove an E46 M3? It was awesome. I just think they're my jam. I am paying attention car. I don't love that. I do not love that particular bit. Rest of it, though, I like. It's the Lucid? No, a Sonata. Had a light bar across the front, though, that kind of reminded me a lot of a Lucid. It's not, though, obviously. It's a Sonata. It's a new body style. Which is nice. It's a nice body style. The reason why I didn't show you some of the other like comfort driving mode thingies is because some of them will actually close the sunroof automatically, and the camera you're watching through is suction cupped to the roof through the glass. So I really don't want to have it knock off. So just trust me, there's some weird driving modes. 1 hour and 50 minutes in, we are at 2.9 miles per kilowatt hour. We've got 128.1 miles. And the car still thinks I'm not totally paying attention, even though I totally am. It's quiet enough in here you can hear the bugs splattering the windshield. Sounds like raindrops. We did run into rain a teeny tiny bit when we turned around, but I don't expect to actually run into any more of that. So everything I'm hearing now is little mosquitoes. So this Tahoe got behind me, and I started to speed up because I was in the left lane overtaking, and you know, I didn't want to hold him up, but he decided that that was not quick enough, that I wasn't accelerating quick enough. So then he tried to pass on the inside, but I was already going at a faster rate of speed. Sorry, Suburban. So I was trying to be courteous, and turns out, not so much. Probably watching this thinking I'm a terrible driver. Maybe I am. Maybe I am. Now that we're nearing 3 miles per kilowatt hour, we are reaching the efficiency of that EQE, which we should, even though this is a much more higher performance car. The sedan body style should be more aero at the same average sorts of speeds. And that car actually had a 111 kilowatt hour battery on board. So this is the range is shorter on this, mostly because of that battery size difference. At the 2 hour check-in, we've gone 139.1 miles. So we're right about on our average speed. We've got 2.9 miles per kilowatt hour. We're making progress. We have an indicated 86 miles of range left, 82 to the charging point. So briefly, it looked like we might actually have guessed wrong, but the guess-o-meter suddenly was a little, like it was like pessimistic, and then it was optimistic, and then it was just statistic, and now it's slightly back on the side of being optimistic. So, whatever. I think ultimately it's going to be pretty accurate, just based on what we're seeing consumption-wise, range, battery, all of that stuff. I just saw looking in that mirror that the light-up kidney grills are lit up at night full-time while you're driving. Not sure how I feel about that. I guess they look alright. It looks kind of dorky in what I just saw, but I hate all these bugs. Thought maybe they were leaving that gate permanently open. Nope, it's just broken. It's pretty typical. Civic Type R. Florida. The heart of it all. I guess. I suppose that's where Ohio's located. If the United States was a human body. Which means if you smell toast, you might be having a stroke. That should be the last significant work zone before the end of our trip. As we enter the Ohio Turnpike. The blue circle doesn't seem to indicate that we'll make it, but it's weird because the circles on the display that you can see sort of right now shows the range of the car, and the checkered flag is obviously a little outside of the range of the car, but The car also says that I have 75 miles of range left, and it's 69 miles there, and I'll arrive at a 1% state of charge. So the circle is not optimistic. The circle is conservative. The Venn diagram is conservative. Now that it's properly dark, a couple other things I'd like to point out, sort of driving this car at night. The augmented reality display doesn't have like night vision, but the headlights are bright enough to keep the road ahead of you lit and stuff like that, so that still works. This car does not have BMW's laser lights. I don't know if it's an option or not. I'll have to check the website. But a lot of these modern cars, especially in the luxury cars, you'll notice a really unique thing with the high beams. The high beams just don't come on when you turn them on or when they automatically come on. They brighten. They're like on a dimmer switch, and they gradually get to the maximum illumination, and then they come down from that. So it's not like a jarring high bright off. It's weird when you first notice it, because you're like, wait, what's going on here? Are my high beams working? Is this whatever? I don't understand necessarily why they do this gradually now. I don't know if it's a luxury feeling kind of a thing, if it's something to maybe less strain on your eyes. I don't know. I am going to actually look into it, though, I promise you. And then because these are probably matrix lights in Europe, when the high beams come on, then you can kind of see it kind of pan out as well, out to the wide angle of it. So we're not allowed to have matrix lights here in the US. Well, we can have matrix lights, but they can't function like me, and I really wish they could. FMVSS just still doesn't account for it, and I really think that it should. And this heads-up display is massive. It takes up probably a third of my visible area looking forward, and it's the bottom third. Now you can see through it, right? Because it's not fully it's not fully opaque. That's the word. The heads-up display is huge. I mean, it's not fully opaque. It is translucent, but it takes up a good bottom portion of the sort of your visible area, including right in front of the car. Now, I have it set, and I can't show you because I can't film it while driving, effectively anyway. I have it set on its kind of navigation mode, and it'll put a big old map on the display too, which is a little weird when you first see it. I don't know, there is a minimal display that I might switch to, or would switch to, if I drove this car regularly, just because I think it is really a ton of screen real estate's devoted to text that should be, your visibility forward. I just adjusted it a little bit to make it a little bit easier, because in the direction mode, it puts this arrow that kind of points you in the way you need to be going, but it doesn't show you a navigation kind of display until you get close to your turn, which I think all of the displays do that. It'll switch to a navigation display when it gets closer to your turn. I wish it would show an augmented reality, kind of like on the instrument cluster, but wishes, horses, everyone gets a ride, The seats are pretty comfortable. I wouldn't mind a massage function or something, and there may be as an optional, just along with ventilated seats. But overall, just as seats in general, they're pretty comfy. The steering wheel is nice and fat, like an M steering wheel. Some people might say it's too fat, but I think it's chunky. It's definitely on the chunky side of things, but I don't think it's too much. Though I wouldn't want the rim to be much bigger than it already is. But really, there's not much that I want for here. It's comfortable, it's quick, the climate control works well, the driver assistance function works well, the Bowers and Wilkins stereo sounds pretty good. It's not as good as, let's say, the one that's in the new Volvo XC90, or EX90, I mean. I bet it'll be the XC90 too, the reference grade one, but it's pretty good. Has Sirius XM, supports Apple and all of that stuff. It's not bad. If I had any other sort of infotainment sort of system complaints, it does present a lot of data. BMW likes to show you a lot of stuff in kind of a very Windows PC kind of way, where some cars are more of a Mac. You just kind of got to spend some time with it to understand. But I do like it. I do like it quite a bit. And because you can now do these new instrument cluster configurations, like this augmented reality display that I've been using since I've had it, the instrument cluster doesn't seem as dark and as dingy as the digital instrument clusters that BMW has been using for a while. Just because there wasn't a lot of customization, not a lot you could do, not a lot to look at. This car has a lot to look at if you want to. So I think that's a marked improvement. This car is also a 5 Series, so there's lots of rear seat room. The trunk, I think, could be a little bit bigger. I mean, there's a lot of space, but for a big sedan, a little more trunk space probably would be welcomed. But you got to put some of the batteries somewhere. You know, this is not a dedicated EV platform like the iX is, so some sacrifices do need to be made. But I think the platform sharing actually helps BMW because, like I mentioned earlier, like this car is a cruise missile. Like it feels like this drive that it's doing right now is easy. It feels like it's boring the car. You know, it doesn't, the German sedans, especially BMWs, just eat the highway mile and will eat them at speeds that, you know, you shouldn't be going. And because the Autobahn, you know, and if you have an opportunity to go to Germany and drive on the Autobahn before they become all restricted, that would be amazing. But the car just seems very nonplussed about Ohio Turnpike driving. So yeah, whatever. Ain't no thing. And I like that feeling. And I think part of that feeling comes from the platform sharing. Because they're engineering the 5 Series to do that. They're engineering the 7 Series to do that. So when you add the batteries and stuff to it, you still have sort of that inherent BMW sedanness in it. Am I talking mostly from my butt? Yes, I am. But I think that there is something to it. And the gas sedans, the gas BMWs are getting just as heavy as these cars. Like I said, I think this car is nearly the same weight, if not a little lighter than the new M5. And the new M5 is going to be a monster, sure. Plug-in hybrid, turbocharged V8. Like, it's going to be a monster. But why? Why is it so heavy? And honestly, like, yeah, it would be nice to have the plug-in hybrid for a real cross-country like thrash, but most of the time you're probably going to be, if you plug it in properly like you should be doing, you should be plugging your plug-in hybrids in. Watch my video about that. Then most of the time you're driving on electricity anyways, so then why not just have the electric version of the car? That's my problem-free philosophy, Hakuna Matata. One of the options that you can pull up sort of while you're driving is the charging menu. And the charging menu allows you to do a few things. You can decide whether you want to charge immediately or on a schedule. You can set a departure plan. So instead of saying, hey, I want to start charging at 9 p.m., you can say, oh, I want to leave at 10 a.m. tomorrow, and then it'll start charging sort of based on that. You can set an AC charge limit. And by default, it's set to 48 amps. Now, whatever level 2 charger you plug into, it'll adapt to that. So if you only plug in, let's say, a 32 amp charger, it's not going to try to pull 48 amps and trip the breaker. It won't do that. But if you were plugging into maybe a wall charger or something, and you're not super confident about the wiring of the house or the garage, you could bring that amperage down some. I suppose you could also just do it if you wanted to try to, I don't know, eke out battery life preservation, but I don't think it's worth micromanaging that much. The only other time maybe you would need to actually adjust this is if you were charging a car from like a generator or another electric vehicle with V2L functionality. Because like with Ford, like with the Mach-E and the Lightning, for example, the charging cord that sort of comes with the Mach-E will charge at 32 amps. But the truck will only let out for 30. And there have been times where we've tripped the breaker in the truck because it's trying to pull more amperage than what the truck can give. So you need to have like a charger that just draws only 30 amps plugged into there, and then everything works fine. If you knew that was sort of like your situation, if you were running into weird charging issues, then you could play with this some. Is that a really long way to explain something you're never going to touch? Yes. But I do like that BMW gives you that opportunity, that option to change that in case you were running into issues. Charging target. It doesn't let you separate between DC and AC, but you can say, hey, I want to go to 80% or 50% or whatever. And if you notice, there's a little battery, little heart logo there at 80%. BMW is recommending, per the infotainment system, that you only charge to 80% from battery longevity. Now, long-term testing that we've seen from companies show that you could probably go to 90 no problem without serious degradation. And if this car had an LFP battery, which it does not, then you would want to go to 100% pretty regularly. You can unlock the charging cable, so if you're charging and you need to disconnect it, preconditioning. Now, this is something you may use occasionally. When you go into it, it'll say activate automatically. So if you have a destination set that is a charging station, it will automatically warm the battery up. It'll precondition it to the right temperature ahead of time. You can also activate it once. So if you're not using the navigation, or you're using maybe Apple Maps or something, and you want to be able to go in and turn on preconditioning, then you can do that. Right now it says the battery is ready for faster DC fast charging. That's because before we left, we DC fast charged it, which brought it up to temperature, and then we immediately started going highway speeds, which is going to keep a decent amount of temperature in the pack. And with the ambient air temperature still at plus 75 degrees Fahrenheit, it's not going to cool off. But I like that it'll do it automatically if you have a destination set. But if you're using Apple Maps or Waze or something else, you can activate it manually. I like having both options. Some EVs let you do it, others do not. And I like seeing it as the option. Plug and charge. This car supports plug and charge. You have to have a BMW ID and be logged in with your payment information, stuff like that. But for stations that support plug and charge, you just pull up, plug in, and it works like the Tesla experience. When BMW switches to NACS, the J3400, that's how that support will work. This car is not logged into a BMW ID because I don't have a BMW ID, because I don't own a BMW. This isn't my car. Don't know if you know that. I know you guys know that. But some people, I see some commenters sometimes that are like, well, they're very much like implied that like I bought the car. Nope, didn't buy it. It goes away on Monday. We get them for a week. We test them. We try to do as much testing as we can in that week or so. And then we move on. One thing I've never seen in a car before is fan loudness. And I think this applies mostly to DC fast charging. I suppose maybe if it got warm while it was AC charging, you can actually choose how loud the fan gets. I would assume that affects DC fast charging performance. If you want it to run quiet, it won't be able to cool as much, so it'll have to slow down the amount of electricity it's bringing in. But I've never seen that as an option. Is the fan loud when you're DC fast charging? Yeah, but so is nearly every EV. So I'm not quite sure what's going on there. And then location-based charging settings. They kind of stole this from Tesla. I've seen other automakers support it too, but what's nice about this is if your work charger only, like, you want to limit to 32 amps at your work charger for some reason, you can set it that way and it'll automatically switch that setting to 32 amps. If you know that you're at this particular charger and you want to go to 100%, but other times you go to 90, like, it can remember those settings so that you're not constantly in this menu changing it. So big ups to BMW for offering a lot of this charger flexibility. With 46 miles left to go, we're still at 2.9 miles per kilowatt hour, and we've gone 176.4 miles. Indicating 52 left in range, so we should have 1% of state of charge when we get there. Again, not super worried about that, unlike that Mini we had. Oh, more big bug guts. Gross. So I must have smudged something right in front of the augmented reality camera, because now the display looks like it has an astigmatism with oncoming headlights. We've recouped almost 2 kilowatt hours. It's almost 6 miles of range through recuperation. Ain't so bad, considering most of this is flat highway, and really our recuperation opportunities have only been slowing down either for on-ramps or for off-ramps, or for the occasional traffic work zone kind of situation. Let's do the color change one more time because it's fun. Personal mode, I've got it set for this blue. Just super cute. Sport, which goes all red, but then it brings in the BMW-ness from the side, the blue. And I like how it adds that. That's sick. I like that. Expressive and vibrant lighting effects. Also, I don't know if you can tell from the camera. I kind of hope you can. It went to the minimal display in the instrument cluster, and it carried over this wallpaper over to it. Very interesting. No, no, no. Relax tried to close the sunroof. So it looked like my hand was all flailing around. That would be why. 42 miles to go. Ugh. If you want to see more of this type of content, let me know in the comments below. If you don't want to see more of this content, subscribe to the channel at least the $2.99 a month level, because the more money you pay me, the less I'll go do this. There, how about that? If you want to see less, pay me more. Ha! No, I'm kidding. If you don't like this content, also let me know, because I won't do it. But data is data, and accurate testing, like I said earlier, I feel like accurate testing is very important, especially out in the real world where real people drive. And someday we'll have this whole database of just stuff that you'll be able to look by. We are passing a truckload of Teslas. Saw a Cybertruck earlier on a truck, but no Cybertrucks here. Just a bunch of 3s and Ys. Trying to get rid of the camera's astigmatism now. I think I made it worse. But I guess to be fair, I have an astigmatism, so there we go. Me in the car now are one with our vision. Something I didn't talk about because I can't listen to music while we're driving, but the infotainment has gesture controls. So you twist your finger one way and it'll spin your finger one way, it'll increase volume, decrease volume. Use your thumb to point one way or the other, it'll go track forward, track back. So that's pretty cool. Car just beeped to indicate that I have 40 miles of indicated range left, 33 to our destination. So in order to do the charging challenge, test data stuff earlier, I did drive it down to like 2 miles left of range, 2 or 4 miles left of range, and it started to limit power. It actually shows you kind of an orange instrument, like power indicator, to show you where it's limiting, and it pops up a little turtle, like you're in turtle mode. Like, it does a pretty good job at telling you, hey, you're probably going to need to charge. But it does start warning you early on, like at 40 miles, it's like, hey, that's your first real indication that you need to maybe start looking for a place to charge. Now, the destination that I have set, the navigation system in this BMW doesn't yet know that it's a charging station. So that's probably partially why it's warning me now. Because I think if it knew I had a destination set that was a charging station, I'm not sure it would be as aggressive at warning me. And now the checkered flag is within the blue circle, as I knew it would be the whole time. You know, and the more that I do of these, and the more that I drive EVs, I mean, obviously it's my job, at least for right now, is to do that. But it's the more that I do it, really, the easier it becomes. Like, there needs to be more public charging stations that are reliable. Iona is coming. It's going to be better. EA should be fixing their stuff. They're putting in new hardware. Flying J is putting a bunch of stations in. I saw that, I forget the other, not Loves, but maybe it was Loves, I don't remember. But another one of these places are, putting a bunch of these stations in. Buc-ee's is starting to get them. They're really starting to roll out. And yes, to get the real high-speed charging, it does require a metric buttload of power. So, that kind of stuff does take time, because it's hard to get a metric buttload of power into some pretty rural areas. But really, that's why EV ownership is so important, to have the home or workplace charging. And in some places where it's hard to get that much power, you're seeing these new types of chargers that have a battery in them, a 40 kilowatt hour battery or a 100 kilowatt hour battery even, that will output at like 60 kilowatts or 100 kilowatts, or could peak at 200 kilowatts. But you plug it into a regular charger or a regular wall outlet, like a 240 kind of a wall outlet, or a 208 typically in a business, and that will recharge that battery. So you can get a good peak pull from it, but then when nobody's charging from it, that battery can recharge from a much better grid kind of situation. So you're seeing a lot of real clever thought depending on usage. At a real busy station, at a real busy interchange, yeah, you would want all that power all the time. But some of these chargers don't need that to still deliver excellent performance for people who are driving to her and need to be able to charge. Now, we go to 100% on our charging curve videos because we're testing, we're trying to do the data that way. Nobody in the real world is doing that. But we do it to provide the data for you. I'd rather say, oh, this car will do 10 to 80 in whatever percent in whatever state of time, but then also be able to give you that 100% number just so that you can provide the context of all of it. Because context is for kings. And as for the power grid, you know, I think another one of the frustrating things about a lot of misinformation out there right now talks a lot about the power grid and how if we had EVs tomorrow, the grid would be terrible. Well, maybe it would be, but we're not going to have all EVs tomorrow. The grid is being updated, and people are working on clever solutions to grid problems just as quickly or quicker than EV adoption is moving. So, you know, we're not going to immediately have all EVs tomorrow, even if there were a mandate. So why does the grid have to be perfect now when the grid doesn't have to be better until 10 years from now? I think it's a fair question. It's weird because for some reason everything has to be perfect right away for the EV naysayers to say that, you know, it's not whatever. I had somebody comment earlier today, they were like, well, you know, if all the cars were EVs, you know, how much pollution does that, you know, mining all that lithium do? And with the power, you know, with the current power grid mix. Like they were trying to say that, you know, between the lithium mining and all of the extra coal power needed, like it would be worse for the environment. And the thing is, the US power mix isn't as coal heavy as a lot of people think that it is. Parts of the country it is for sure, but we're not going to immediately have 50% EV adoption tomorrow. So why? So it's a stupid argument. It's the stupidest straw man argument that there possibly is. Plus, you know, this stuff is all advancing as EV adoption also advances. You know, when the first gasoline powered cars came out, it's not like suddenly there were petrol stations everywhere. Oh, it took time. So why did, you know, the naysayers let perfect be the enemy of the good? We're not allowed to make process. The same way with battery recycling. Earlier this week, I went to Cox's EV Battery Center in Oklahoma City, where they are doing real-time, real-world recycling of lithium-ion batteries. I watched them do it. And now they're doing, the process that they're doing basically takes the battery all the way down to that sort of raw black powder material that can be refined further in terms of splitting materials and stuff to be reused in batteries. But they've got most of the process, and they're only losing something like 5% to waste. Like it's a very efficient recycling process that they have going on there, and it's crazy. And they're also doing battery cell updates and maintenance, and they're handling recalls, and they're building out right now the infrastructure to help along with like Redwood Materials. Now, Redwood does battery recycling, lithium-ion battery recycling, but they also do phones and things like that. And they're not so concerned, they don't concern themselves with the refurbishing or anything like that. They take the raw materials to turn around and sell them. Cox is doing a little bit more with the raw materials, but some of the stuff they're just getting rid of, they're selling. And it's hugely impressive. Now, is it a small operation right now? Yes, because there's only so many EVs on the road, there's so many just only batteries on the road right now. Now, they're not allowed to talk clients, so I won't talk clients, but they deal with some very large ones that are dealing with a lot of batteries already. But they're not perfect. They're not there yet. They're making mistakes along the way. They're doing everything that you would expect to grow. So when EV adoption is at 40 or 50%, and when we have all these batteries to worry about, they, along with other companies, are going to be ahead of the game. So it's so very easy to knock the powertrain for some reason as a stupid choice for anybody, when really industries are being built nearly overnight to handle things like the usage on the grid and what to do with the materials. And the recycling of batteries is so important because mining lithium isn't the cleanest process, nor is it the most labor-friendly process. But if you're going to sit and deride EV batteries because lithium is mined, cobalt is mined by children, then you also have to do the same thing for your cell phone and your laptop and your watch and your TV and literally every other piece of electronics. So why is it that you just attack the EV? Because the person on TV told you to do it. That's stupid. Stupid reason. They're going to come and take my EVs. Or they're going to come and take my gas car. Just like they're going to come and take my guns. No, they're not. Yes, is SEMA suing CARB over future mandates? Yeah. SEMA sued CARB before over a lot of things. SEMA and CARB don't get along. That water wet, news at 11. The water isn't wet. What water touches is wet. The water itself isn't wet. But the point being, EV mandates are probably coming. They probably are. Before I die, probably not. And with our particular very interesting form of government, the political winds can change every 4 or 8 years, and Congress is inept. It doesn't matter who's in charge, Congress is inept. So I don't really know where these EV mandates are going to come from, right? And as long as you can still go out and buy a gas-powered car in nearly everything, in nearly every model, then I don't know how you should be worried about mandates. And you shouldn't be. I'm not going to make it. And even if EVs became law tomorrow and you couldn't buy a new gas-powered car starting tomorrow, the average age of a car on the road right now is something like 12 years, 13 years. So it would take over a decade for the things to work their way out before gas cars would work their way out, if not longer. And that's with a complete switch over tomorrow, which will not happen. It's impossible. So I don't get it. Don't worry about it. I did a video kind of tongue-in-cheek about not worrying about it, but really you really shouldn't worry about it, because if you're watching this video, you're probably at least interested in EVs. And there's a lot of great cases why you would want one. There's times you wouldn't either. You do a lot of real long mileage driving? No, it might not be right for you. Do you tow a lot? And I mean a lot. I'm not talking like, oh, I tow my jet ski twice a year. If you tow on the regular, yeah, you probably don't want an EV. If you need a heavy-duty pickup truck, well, you can't get those in EVs. So, there, But if you're just going to highway cruise like this, what does it matter? I mean, again, I go back to what does it matter what's powering it? Whether there's a V8 under the hood of this 5 Series or whether it's this electric motor. I'm getting a similar experience. I can go the speed limit or quicker if you really wanted to. All the technology's here. I mean, there's nothing different about the 5 Series gasser. Oh, well, it has soul. Does it? Does it? Does it? Does it? Part of me wants to see EV mandates, not because I think the government should get all up in your business, but because there's so many people out there that are just, obsessively, chronically online, just sucking in the right-wing misinformation that would just lose their absolute minds if there was a mandate. And that would be kind of funny to see. Because, again, we have bigger problems, right? Like the war in Israel, the war in Ukraine. Inflation's still reasonably-ish high. Interest rates are still high, though those might be coming down soon. People are dying every day in auto crashes and by gun violence and by domestic violence, and just people are going hungry. People are homeless. Veterans aren't getting the care they need. Mental health is still stigmatized. Much, much bigger fights to fight than worrying about whether the government's going to force you in 30 years from now to buy an EV. 25 miles of range left. The car wants to know if I wants to show me some charging stations. I don't want it to do that. No thanks. We're at a 10% state of charge. That is the second big warning. Now there's certain things that have turned yellow on the instrument cluster, such as the battery indicator and the range indicator. But anyways, let's solve some other problems before we worry about something that may or may not even happen. I try to hide the range 25 miles pop up and it just pops back up. It's like, no, we want you to know that you're pretty oakley dokley. But let's start summing up the car. The driver assist system, the level 2 ADAS. Excellent. I'd love to see a high-speed hands-off system from BMW, just like I'd like to see one from Mercedes. I believe if I'm below 45 miles an hour, like a traffic jam assist, the BMW will let me go hands-off. And that works pretty well. I've done it in like the 8 Series and stuff like that before. I think it's great. I would like to see it hands-off at highway speeds, but I'm sure that's coming. And really, it's not that much of a chore to keep the hand on the steering wheel. It still really eases the highway driving. I like the automatic lane change function. Again, you have to have your hands on the steering wheel for it. It's pretty responsive. It changes lanes very quickly once you ask for one. And I do like you can just look at the mirrors to help it indicate it. The lane discipline is good. It'll put you in the left lane, then it'll push you back in the right lane. Seems to be mostly thought out. Can you trip it up occasionally? Sure. All these systems can be tripped up occasionally. You should always be paying attention. But I will say, system's pretty good. The only thing I think I'd really like, and the Germans don't offer it, is I'd like to see a camera in each of the mirrors that can see the blind spots the way the Hyundai and Kia and Genesis do. But they may have a patent on that for all I know. So, but that tech is super cool. But the only thing that I would ask for in this to make it like super perfect, not that the car's perfect, but I think the ADAS system is pretty good. Some stuff I didn't even talk about with the driver assist function. It'll do this automatic backing up thing, so like it keeps track of your low speed maneuvering, and then and then you can have it back you up through the exact same way you pulled in. So if you're in a really difficult parking spot or down a really difficult alley and you're not sure how to back out of it, well, the car can just retrace the steps that you took to get into it. It's super clever. As for the car itself, I mean, 600 horsepower, 593, whatever. 600 horsepower, you can get the boost mode by pressing a paddle on the left. In the sports setting, it's sporty, but not like super harsh. There's a launch control function that like kind of shakes the wheels, like it pulses the ABS to make it feel like it's like a roped back like dog ready to be loose. I think it's silly, but the Hummer does it too. I think it's silly in the Hummer, but it is a neat trick. And 0 to 60 in 3.7 seconds. You know, that's moving. It's not the fastest accelerating car in the world, but anything under 4 is more than enough. Anything under 5 is really more than enough. Remember when Cadillac's V Series cars, like the BMW Series, it had to do 5 seconds or less, 0 to 60, and that was like the benchmark of the world, and now we're in the mid-3s on family cars? Wild, right? Wild. But steering is fairly light in most of the driving modes. In sport, it tightens up a little bit, but again, doesn't feel too heavy. There's not a lot of feel through the steering wheel. That's just the facts of life these days. But the BMW steering is a little bit better than in some other cars that I've driven. So it's not the best that I've driven, but it's not bad. It's not bad. I'd like a little bit more feel, I think. I think there's some ways you can engineer some feel into an electric power system. It's not quite as dirty as, let's say, that EQE was, because the rear wheel steering on the EQE makes it really kind of dirty. I love rear wheel steering. I wish every car had it. I wish this car had it. Not that the turning circle is bad. I was able to do a couple of U-turns earlier that were... I wasn't surprised that it was able to do it, but also, you know, I didn't have to worry. But rear wheel steering is excellent. I wish this car had it. But I mean, we're really nitpicking here. Efficiency, 3 miles per kilowatt hour. Hard to argue with that. At lower speeds, it's going to even be better. These 21-inch wheels ride nice. They ride nice over bumps. There's still a decent amount of sidewell. For the amount of money you pay for them, it's worth checking the box, because the range difference between 240 and 256 isn't that much, in my opinion. And when you're trading, if you don't have to trade off too much for range for style, I'm okay with going with style. It's when you're giving up 40, 50 miles of range and you're like, no, then you want the smaller wheels, the more aero wheels. It's super quiet. Like I said, what, 58 decibels in normal driving, 56, 58, up to 60 depending on the pavement you're on. Like, it's a great little car. I mean, it's not a little car. It's a great car. It charges well. It really seems to be a modern electric vehicle that also kind of delivers on all of the tech and features that you would expect from a modern German car. This is definitely doing more in here than, let's say, a lot of eGMP cars like a Genesis is doing. But the Genesis nails the basics, and this also nails the basics. So that's not a dig on Genesis. Just there's some other tech and things in here that I think Genesis should steal. And they will. They typically do. But this doesn't feel like light years ahead of that car either. I think these are very similar performers than, let's say, a G80. Though the G80 is more luxury focused than this, the electrified. But Mercedes, I mean, the EQE sedan's great. I tend to like how BMWs drive a little bit better. So I think I would go with the Beamer. But both will charge at over 200 kilowatts. 200 kilowatts or more, I believe. Maybe the EQE is only 170. Maybe this is a little bit better of a charger. I'll have to double check. But the EQE software the EQ software in their cars is excellent for finding charging stations and stuff like that. Not nearly as good as Tesla stuff, but does pretty good. This one doesn't seem to want to automatically add charging stations as easily as the EQ does. So we'd have to play with this for a little bit more. But ultimately, I think at the end of the day, this is a 5 Series. 5 Series are excellent. They've been excellent for a while. And the electric is just another way to power the 5 Series. So there you go. There you have it. Would I buy this car? Yes. Would I pay $92,000 for this car? No. A few things I would definitely skip on. And I would probably also drive the 50 model, the 40 and the 50 models. Because I don't think I need this much power. I mean, it's nice to have. Launch control is nice to have, but when am I going to use that? But what this car does so very well is it is a German sedan, which obviously, of course, but it's still, even in the electric area, even in the electric era, okay, another warning at 6%, 16 miles, it's now saying that if I stop for a while, as the high voltage battery cools down, I may lose range. So now it's a little more concerned with me. But I'm 4 miles away, so no worries. What I was saying is, this is quintessentially a German sedan, a high-powered, high-speed German sedan, a Saturn V rocket, a cruise missile. Use whatever analogy you want. And the cool thing about these electric BMWs is they're just the same. If you like that feeling, if you like that almost that very special je ne sais quoi that comes from driving a high-performance German sedan, this does it. Does all of it. I don't think you need an M5. There, I said it. Don't at me, bro. So the augmented reality navigation wants me in one more lane over to the right. Probably because I need to exit here very soon. I'll get there, car. Don't worry. Have no fear. I'm going to turn the navigation off, though, because, hey, we're basically there. Cancel route guidance. Once we pull in, we'll get the final data once I put it in the park, and I won't do that on camera, but I'll let you know in the closing stand-up how we did. But I think we did pretty well. Looks like 3 miles per kilowatt hour. Not too shabby, I don't think. So gas with this Flying J has dropped like 5 cents since I was last here. Look at that. 309, which means that 64 cents a kilowatt hour that I pay here makes it all that less exciting. So why you need to charge at home, kids? Charge at home. Well, after 3 hours and 10 minutes of driving, what exactly did we learn? Well, our average speed was, again, 70 miles per hour. Technically, if you do the math, it was 70.2, but since we didn't use decimal places on the other cars, we will round to 70 for this. And we got 3 miles per kilowatt hour, which is pretty excellent, actually. and we drove a total of 222.2 miles. That means, based on the battery pack on this car, we should have been able to do 252.9 miles before running completely dead. Now that's compared to 240 miles based on the EPA. So we actually would be doing almost 13 miles better in range than what the EPA says we could do. And considering these are the 21-inch tires, I think that's pretty impressive. You're getting nearly 19-inch tire range with the 21s. So I'd probably go with the 21s. Now we should have been able to, based on the amount of driving that we've done, go another 30.7 miles. Now the indicator on the dash said roughly 15 to 20. I don't remember exactly which, but somewhere around 15 to 20 miles. So there probably is a few extra miles left in reserve just in case. Though when we did the charging challenge earlier, when we pulled in with 5 miles of range left and 2% state of charge, we were limited to roughly 60% total power output. So I don't know if it'll do the exact 252, but you should be pretty close to it. And the onboard computer, once it figures out your driving habits, once it figured out that I was doing a lot of highway driving, it adjusted very quickly to give me a fairly accurate representation of where we are and how far we need to go. So overall, I'm impressed. Anytime you can beat the EPA, that is impressive, because the EPA cycle is, it's more real world than like WLTP, but it's also a little bit harder to beat. So good for this BMW. As you can see, we are at a full featured charging station. We have a canopy to protect us from the weather, lights so you can see at night, so you can record video like this and not feel as threatened while you're charging your car. This station was put here in a partnership with Flying J, GM Energy, and EVgo. And to learn more about it, click on my video by clicking the pop-out video link right over here.